She flashed her keys like they were a crown and called me the family disappointment, right there, at Thanksgiving dinner. Hi, I'm Rowan. For years, I stayed quiet while they celebrated my sister's every move and treated me like a placeholder at my own family's table. But here's what they didn't know. While she was bragging about her new house, I had already bought the land beneath her feet. Have you ever swallowed humiliation so bitter it burned into memory? What would you do if your own blood tried to bury you? Tell me, how far would you go to reclaim your name? Let me take you back to the night everything changed. The clink of crystal and soft jazz echoed through my parents' villa in Dallas. The long mahogany dining table gleamed under golden chandeliers, set for Thanksgiving perfection, linen napkins folded like swans, name cards in gold foil, and cutlery placed with military precision. I sat near the end of the table, swirling my wine glass, the stem cool beneath my fingers. She bought a mansion? Cute, I thought. Let's talk again tomorrow. Brielle stood, her wine glass raised like a scepter. I just closed on my dream house in Highland Park, she announced, loud enough to silence the room. 3 floors. Imported marble. A pool that would make a resort jealous. And the wine vault. Oh, you should see it. Slow motion in my mind. Heads turned, jaws dropped, and someone's fork clinked against china. I watched her, perfectly lit under the chandelier, glowing in smugness. Somewhere to my left, I caught a guest subtly raising their phone and hitting record. She didn't wait for applause. I negotiated everything myself, Brielle added. Closed the deal in record time. Frank and Lillian beamed. A real investment, my father said. You're building a future, honey, Mom chimed in, her tone drenched in pride. Their duet of praise hadn't changed since we were kids. Brielle's eyes flicked toward me, the smile sharpening. Rowan, you're still freelancing, right? Must be rough out there with gig checks and rent cycles. A few forced chuckles. The burn was clear. I dabbed my mouth with a napkin, fingers slow and deliberate. Freelance, I said softly. That's one way to call it. I felt every eye shift toward me, waiting for me to flinch. Instead, I smiled lightly, lifting my wine. You know, Brielle pressed, twisting the knife. Some people build. Some just dream. She laughed like it was nothing, but I caught the twitch in her jaw. Sloan looked at me across the table, his brow barely raised, but he knew. He always knew when something was about to burn. I set my glass down. The sound sliced through the ambient jazz. I already did, I said evenly. I just don't invite people who doubted me. Just 2 nights earlier, I'd sat across from a real estate mogul in a glass-walled high-rise, the city glowing behind him. The contract lay between us, thick and weighty. It's aggressive, he said, tapping the paper. But if you close this before Friday, you'll own the entire stretch, including 3048, the new Highland Park build. I didn't hesitate. I signed, slid the file to my lawyer Duarte, and stood. Do it quietly, I said. I want to be the last person they expect. Back in the present, Brielle let out a satisfied sigh. I mean, the realtor was a beast, she said, waving her hand like a queen giving credit. Stella something. Fierce negotiator. Got me a steal. My smile twitched. Stella was Nina Duarte's middle name. She had played her part perfectly. A fork scraped too loud against china. Someone coughed to break the tension. The jazz music stuttered, then abruptly faded, as if even the speakers wanted in on the drama. I heard a clink. Someone had dropped a spoon in slow disbelief. From my end of the table, Sloane's gaze sharpened. His eyes pinged from Brielle to me and back, processing, calculating. I caught him mouthing something under his breath, maybe a question to himself. She wouldn't, would she? The silence that followed was thick enough to chew. Brielle's smirk faltered. Frank's fork stopped mid-cut. Lillian blinked twice. Cute mansion, I added, letting the silence stretch. I bought the whole block. The sound of a glass being set down too hard. A cough. Tension surged like static across the table. Brielle let out a brittle laugh. What, like, metaphorically? I didn't respond. I stood up instead, walking calmly to the sideboard and pouring myself another glass. From my pocket, my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. A message from Duarte. Documents finalized. Ashford Holdings owns all 5 properties as of 8 a.m. tomorrow. I didn't look back as I sipped. The room behind me remained silent, filled with people who thought they knew which Ashford daughter mattered most. They were about to find out. The morning after Thanksgiving was silent, almost surgical. The kind of stillness that follows a kill. I stood on the balcony of my Preston Hollow mansion, barefoot, sipping espresso from a porcelain cup as light filtered through the clouds in perfect symmetry. The sun hadn't fully risen, but the day was already mine. She flexed a mortgage, I muttered, watching the horizon. I dropped $12 million.
Cash.
Inside, my phone pinged with a notification.
Duarte.
Deeds filed. County registry updated. 5 contiguous lots under Ashford Holdings as of 8 a.m.
Clean.
Untraceable. 2 days ago, I'd met her in a penthouse suite in Austin. Duarte always picked the most discreet places, above the skyline, beneath radar. She laid out the documents with crisp efficiency. I remember her words. Make it clean. Make it untraceable to you, until I say otherwise. I signed, sipped my bourbon, and walked out with no fanfare. Silence had always been my sharpest blade. Now it was time to let it bleed. I walked into my study, where a black-bound folder sat on the glass desk. A street layout of Brielle's new kingdom was marked with red ink, 5 houses, all adjoining. Hers in the middle. I tapped my nail on her plot. Down the block, a delivery van pulled up. Workers began unloading a brass nameplate onto the front gate. A drone buzzed quietly in the distance, hovering above the tree line, filming everything from above. The low thrum of its rotors pulsed like a heartbeat. Property of Ashford Holdings, private management. The brass gleamed in the morning haze. The sound of the screws tightening into metal rang out in the air, sharp and final. A slow, deliberate action like a coffin being sealed. By 8:45, I was already fielding texts from 3 realtors, 2 luxury blogs, and 1 extremely nosy neighbor. But it was the scream from Highland Park that really made my morning. Somewhere inside the Ashford villa, Frank sat hunched on the edge of a leather armchair, his eyes narrowed as Brielle's voice pierced through the speakerphone. She's spiraling, Lil, he muttered. This isn't like her. Lillian didn't respond. She clutched the phone tightly, her knuckles white, gaze frozen on the tablet screen where a neighbor's live stream showed the words glinting off Brielle's gate. Private property, owner, Rowan Ashford. Brielle's call to my mother must have shaken the walls. Someone just bought the entire street. And I don't know who, she shrieked through the phone, according to Lillian's later retelling. They're saying new management. That we're being assessed. She burst out of her front door in a silk robe and designer slippers, phone in one hand, a protein shake in the other. The neighbors peeked through their blinds. A moving truck sat idling in front of the house next door. A man in a navy jumpsuit removed a "for sale" sign and replaced it with a private access warning. His boots crunched on gravel with a precision that made the moment cinematic. They said new management is repurposing the block, the worker explained. No more short-term rentals. No outside landscaping crews. Whole vibes changing. You can't be serious, she snapped. This is MY neighborhood. A woman from 2 doors down, someone with a tennis visor and a Pomeranian, muttered just loud enough. Not anymore. The moment dragged like a needle on vinyl. Every sound, birds chirping, the clank of truck doors, even the faint breeze, felt amplified. A soundtrack of humiliation. Brielle spun, face flushed, storming back toward her house, only to freeze as the delivery crew secured the new plaque to her front gate. Private property, owner, Rowan Ashford. She staggered back 2 steps. Her protein shake slipped from her hand and shattered against the concrete. From my balcony, I watched it all. Her meltdown, the stares, the quiet humiliation unraveling her layer by layer. I didn't smile. Not yet. But I did notice the old Labrador from across the street. He used to bark at me when I jogged. This time, he wandered toward the sidewalk, wagged his tail, and settled next to the wrought iron gate of my home, like he'd switched allegiance. A knock came at my front door. One of Duarte's assistants stood with a sleek black box. Inside, a bottle of champagne chilled on crystal ice, a note affixed in gold ink. Congratulations from the silent backer who bets on quiet power. Later that morning, a reel surfaced on Highland Park's neighborhood gossip page. A neighbor had filmed Brielle mid-meltdown, shrieking, "This is MY neighborhood." The caption was merciless. Highland Park meltdown nail polish collision guess who doesn't own the block anymore? By noon, it had 12K views and counting. I didn't share it, didn't comment. I just scrolled past with a twitch of a smile.
My phone buzzed again. Duarte.
Next up, the exposure. I typed back slowly. Let her sweat first. You built a lie. I built a paper trail. The words hummed through my head like a metronome as I walked into Thornhaven Golf and Estates for Sunday brunch. The sun filtered softly through the glass ceiling, casting dappled light on white linen, champagne flutes, and perfectly manicured smiles. The Ashfords always chose this place when they wanted to look powerful and leisure. I spotted them already seated on the terrace, Frank reading a financial journal like it mattered, Lillian waving at acquaintances she'd forget by dessert. Brielle was glowing, dressed in pastels and faux humility, greeting guests like she was on a political campaign. I knew that look. She was gearing up for a performance. Flashback. I was 19, working 2 jobs, saving tip money in a sock drawer while Brielle called me the dreamer with a latte addiction. Every time she mocked me, I listened. Quietly, observing the family trust's annual reports, asking Duarte to explain missing numbers. I had been building this moment for years. Rowan, sweetie, Brielle called. You made it. I was just telling everyone about the gala. She gestured around the table, where several extended relatives and a few bored wives hovered like decorative plants. I'm sure they're fascinated, I said, sliding into the empty seat beside Sloane. It's going to be huge, she gushed. 6 figures already pledged. Massive donors. We're doing so much for the children. A server poured mimosas. I took mine, eyes on hers. Which nonprofit filed your 990? The table stiffened. Brielle blinked. It's still being finalized, she said quickly. We're working with a partner foundation. It's complicated. That's funny, I said lightly, because the IRS doesn't like complicated. Sloane leaned forward, tapping his glass lightly. Wait, wasn't that money pulled from the family trust? Frank looked up from his journal. What? Sloane leaned forward again, this time his voice a little softer, but unmistakably sharp. Funny, he said, swirling his mimosa. You told me last week the gala funds were being routed through a third-party management firm. Lyra Solutions, wasn't it? Brielle's eyes snapped toward him. But none of these statements mention Lyra. Just your name. No intermediary. So which is it, Brie? His tone carried the faintest edge of curiosity that cut deeper than any accusation. Did the money ever leave your account? Her lips parted, then closed again. It was a temporary deposit, she stammered. My assistant, she's supposed to process the transfers. It's just delayed. Sloane didn't look convinced. Neither did anyone else. Brielle waved dismissively. It's a temporary shift in funds. For liquidity. Everything's documented. I reached into my blazer pocket and laid a crisp folder on the table. Lillian's fingers paused midair above her fruit salad. Inside was a highlighted account statement, line after line of withdrawals labeled event prep, staffing, and venue preview, all routed to an account under Brielle's name. She froze. That's not what it looks like. Oh, I agree, I said, sliding it closer to Frank and Lillian. It looks worse. Lillian reached under the table and grasped Brielle's hand. But when she read the third page, she slowly pulled her hand back. Brielle looked around, waiting for anyone to jump in. No one did. One of the women at a nearby table whispered something to her husband, who tilted his phone screen and typed, "Gossip at Thornhaven." The jazz band played on, but the notes sounded thinner, off-tempo. I took another sip and tilted my head. Remember that brunch here? Maybe 7 years ago. Same terrace. You toasted your first flip and said, I looked directly at Brielle. My sister still thinks hard work means tipping 20%. Maybe one day she'll own a bike. I smiled gently and gestured to the folder.
Well,
I kept the tip habit, but I also kept records. I pulled a second envelope from my bag and placed it directly in the center of a table. Bank statements. 3 months. 10 withdrawals. 1 destination U. The table went silent. All eyes were locked on Brielle. Even the server, who just delivered quiche, paused mid-pour. Sloane didn't look away. Lillian's lips parted slightly, stunned. Slow motion. Brielle's breath hitched. Her facade, polished, pastel, perfect, started to crumble. I leaned back, sipped my mimosa, and looked directly at her. Charity's a beautiful thing. So is accountability. No one moved. Frank reached for his phone with fingers that didn't shake often. He scrolled through contacts, face hardening. I'm calling the trust CPA. Lillian reached out, her voice low, trying to soften the edge. Sweetheart, there must be a misunderstanding. Maybe we can sort this privately. No need to ruin brunch. I didn't blink. She stole from you. You're worried about brunch? Lillian's mouth opened slightly, but I cut her off. You never asked what I was building, Lillian. But now you know what I can destroy. The use of her first name hit harder than any raised voice. The air between us cracked. Brielle didn't speak, didn't blink. She sat in silence, a ghost in a sunny brunch. And I didn't have to raise my voice. I had raised the bar instead. You wanted spotlight. Let's shine it real bright. The ballroom at the Magnolia shimmered with luxury. Chandeliers casting golden halos over crisp white linens, ice sculptures melting in slow elegance, and a string quartet playing something vaguely Vivaldi. The night was peak spectacle. I remembered her words, years ago at a dinner party, when she toasted herself under fairy lights and cameras. Publicity is everything. People only believe what they see.
She had lived by it.
And tonight I was going to weaponize that very principle. Before I left my hotel suite, I'd open my laptop and queued up the front page expose, time-stamped and ready. All I had to do was watch it unfold. Brielle stood at the heart of it, dressed in a backless emerald gown and glowing like the cameras owed her their lens. I watched from the suite across the street, 20 stories up, champagne in hand, eyes narrowed behind smoked glass. My own private box seat to the collapse. Inside, the charity gala was reaching its climax. Every child deserves a future, Brielle said, her voice ringing clear across the marble room. And tonight you help build it. The applause came like clockwork. Cameras flashed. Waiters slipped between tables with trays of caviar and domed desserts. Guests whispered praise and posed for photos with cardboard cutouts of the fictional foundation's logo. Duarte moved through the back of the room with surgical ease. Her black suit melted into the shadows. No one knew her name, but in her coat pocket sat a flash drive and a phone with one draft email waiting to go live. Then came the highlight reel. The LED screen lit up behind Brielle as the lights dimmed. Images of children running through fields, volunteers painting walls, staged hugs, and studio-lit smiles. She stood beside the screen, her expression serene. But 37 seconds in, the visuals shifted. One by one, transaction screenshots faded in, family trust withdrawals, direct deposits, email headers with her signature. The room quieted. A cough somewhere near the back echoed like a gunshot. The final screen, a confirmation email. From Brielle Ashford. Subject line: transfer approved. The music faltered. Brielle's eyes widened. Her mic crackled as she stepped forward, voice tight. That's not part of but the feed cut her off. The MC tried to speak, only to find his mic had gone dead. He looked around in confusion. The tech table was empty. No one moved. Duarte pressed send. Across the ballroom, journalists' phones buzzed in unison. On the LED screen, the gala slideshow was replaced by the homepage of Highland Observer. Charity fraud in Highland Park, heiress under fire. The headline burned against the velvet decor.
Gasps.
Then murmurs. Then cameras. A reporter stood, her notepad already open. Miss Ashford, she said, her voice cutting through the static. Is your mansion built on stolen trust funds? Brielle froze. Lillian stood up instinctively, but Frank reached out, gently pulling her back down. Sloane stood beside her and whispered, "Now you see her." Frank's eyes narrowed. Across the ballroom, a sharply dressed man stood and tossed something onto the table, his name card, sliding toward the centerpiece like a warning. "That's Miller from Cambridge Holdings," Frank muttered under his breath. "He thinks I vouched for this." The tension in his face deepened. He rose halfway from his chair, as if to follow, but sat back down slowly, his gaze fixed forward, refusing to look at Brielle. His pride was unraveling with every passing second. The reporter repeated the question. "Did you take family money under the guise of philanthropy?" Brielle turned slowly, stepping back from the podium like it had grown teeth. A young girl, maybe 10, stood near the front row, wearing a white satin dress with a pin name tag, scholarship recipient. She stared at the screen, then at Brielle. Her lower lip trembled. Brielle's gaze flicked between the guests, now turning against her, and the child, her supposed cause, silently crying. And then she ran. Heels clicking furiously on marble, she shoved past a waiter, knocking over an ice bucket. Photographers surged forward. Flashbulbs fired. Brielle fled toward the side exit, heels clacking against the marble. She reached the backstage hall and grabbed the door handle, pulled once, twice, slammed her palm.
Locked.
Her breath caught in her throat. Panic clawed its way up her chest. There was no back door. No escape. She turned slowly, back to the ballroom. Dozens of cameras now trained on her, faces turning, fingers pointing. She had no choice but to walk back through the wreckage, every step dragging her dignity behind her. The last thing the guests saw before the screen went black was an alert from a second outlet. Authorities investigating Ashford Foundation. From my vantage point across the street, I could see everything. The lights, the shifting crowd, the frozen figure on stage. The hotel's mirrored glass reflected the chaos like a war zone in a snow globe. I didn't move. I didn't speak. Just one figure above it all, watching, judging. The queen not of hearts, but of reckoning. Across the street, I raised my glass and toasted the fallout. She wanted publicity. She got exposure. And I wasn't done yet. You're not being pushed out, Brielle. You just never belonged here. Monday morning in Highland Park carried an eerie calm. A breeze whispered through the oaks lining the street, rustling the same hedges Brielle once bragged were imported. Now they were silent witnesses. One by one, glossy envelopes were slid under doors, tucked into mailboxes, or placed gently atop marble steps. Most were embossed in silver. Welcome to Ashford Holdings, your new property partner. But the one delivered to Brielle's door was different. Her hands shook as she tore it open. The paper inside wasn't congratulatory. It was cold, clinical. Eviction notice, due to breach of residential ethics agreement, fraudulent activity, and abuse of shared resources. Your residency at 18 Elmsworth Lane is hereby revoked. You have 48 hours to vacate. She screamed. Neighbors flinched as the sound echoed down the pristine avenue. Her manicured nails clawed the envelope, tearing it to shreds. Security cameras caught it all. Brielle barefoot, still in her designer robe, crumpling to the driveway. Tears streaked her foundation. She beat her fists against the gate. A new security guard stood at the entrance, stoic in navy blazer and earpiece. I live here, she shouted, rushing him. He didn't budge. Owner said your access has been revoked. She froze. Owner. He nodded toward the street. Rowan Ashford. Brielle stumbled back, eyes wide, breathing short and sharp. Inside the homes surrounding hers, blinds shifted. Faces peeked. Mrs. Parks from across the street stepped onto her porch, coffee cup in hand. About time someone shut her up, she muttered, not even trying to hide it. The intercom buzzed to life. Brielle pressed every button. No answer. Every code she'd memorized denied. Desperate, she dialed her parents. Mom, she cried into the phone. They locked me out. I'm being evicted from my own house. A pause. Then Lillian's voice, distant. We need time to process, Brielle. Maybe you should, too. Click. Her knees buckled. The street, once her stage, now felt like a spotlight trap. She saw it. Yard signs being posted. One by one, in front of every house. Metallic gold lettering shimmered beneath the sun. Owned by Rowan Ashford, Ashford Holdings. Her eyes darted from sign to sign, until she realized the entire block bore her sister's name. Not one, not two. The entire street. A slow hum reached her ears. Bentley tires gliding across pavement. She turned. Rowan's car rolled past, pristine black against the sunlit backdrop. Sloane sat in the passenger seat, arms folded. His gaze flicked toward Brielle, and held. The window lowered. Rowan didn't lean. She didn't smirk. Her voice was smooth steel. You flexed one house, she said, pausing. I bought the whole street. Then the window rolled back up. The Bentley glided away, Sloane's silhouette never flinching. The only sound that remained was Brielle's breath, shallow and shaking. She dropped to the curb. Desperation bleeding into panic, Brielle fumbled with her phone. Her fingers shook as she tapped out a message to Haley Trevors, her most photographed friend, once a constant on yachts and red carpets. Please. I just need a place to stay. Just a few days. The message sent. She stared at the screen, watching the receipt appear. No typing bubble. No response. Nothing. Her breath hitched. Even her curated friendships were vanishing, one silence at a time. Somewhere down the lane, a man handed out flyers. Upcoming project, Ashford Development, a vision for tomorrow. He skipped Brielle's mailbox. She had no future there. That night, under the cover of darkness, Brielle crept back toward her former home. Dressed in old sweatpants and a hoodie pulled low, she avoided the streetlights, slipping through hedges, inching toward the back gate like a fugitive. She reached the grass. Then came the voice. This property is under surveillance. Step away from the premises. A spotlight flared on. Brielle gasped, stumbling back as if struck. Her breath caught in her throat. She turned and ran, barefoot, into the night. Cameras continued rolling. Across the neighborhood, doors closed quietly. Conversations resumed. Brielle had become a ghost. Her past, sealed inside a house she no longer had the right to enter. As the confrontation played out, the soft piano in the background slowed, each note spaced like a ticking clock. Then came the strings. Low at first, then tighter, faster, swelling like rising tension in a thriller. A crescendo matched the moment Brielle dropped to the curb, sobbing under the full light of morning. When she finally dragged her suitcase down the street, the music shifted to silence, only the sound of wheels on stone, and one final drone shot pulling higher and higher until her figure was just a speck in the empire Rowan had claimed. From above, a drone panned out slowly. Street by street, block by block, every roof gleamed beneath the rising sun. At the entrance, a new sign glistened like final punctuation. Ashford Holdings, private access only. Inside her former home, the system wiped her name from every registry. The smart lights dimmed without her. The keypad blinked red. And somewhere beyond it all, my phone vibrated once. A call from Frank. The screen lit up. Dad incoming. I stared at it. Let it ring. We didn't know his voice would say, "Can we talk?" But I knew, and I was done listening. I tapped the screen and turned it off. I didn't just take the crown. I built the whole kingdom. The sunrise over Preston Hollow spilled gold onto the terrace outside my master suite. I stood barefoot, coffee warming my palms, watching Dallas breathe under a new sky. The air was clean, lighter, like it had been holding its breath for years. Soft violin notes drifted from the built-in speakers, a delicate waltz barely audible above the wind. Each bow stroke felt like a string being untangled from my chest. My phone buzzed again. The screen bloomed with another message from Brielle. The 6th one this morning. You win. Happy. Can we please talk? You don't know how hard things were for me. They expected me to be perfect. Each ping chipped away at the silence I'd worked so hard to build. I read them all. Not a single apology. Just excuses. I locked the screen. Let her sweat. Outside, just beyond the iron gates, a familiar black SUV idled at the curb. Frank and Lillian sat inside. Neither got out. They didn't even step up to the buzzer. Instead, the driver slid an envelope through the gate. But something else was tucked inside a small velvet pouch. I opened it cautiously. Inside lay the delicate gold necklace my mother had once worn at every gala, every birthday. The one she promised would go to the child who brings honor to our name. I hadn't seen it in years. I stared at it a long time, feeling nothing victorious, only a quiet, exhausted clarity. Then I closed the pouch and slipped it, untouched, into a drawer. Inside, a single page. No signatures. No long-winded speeches. Just 4 words in my father's handwriting. We see you now. I stared at it for a moment. Then I tore it in half, dropped it into the fire bowl beside the lounge chair, and watched the flames erase the ink. No rage. No pain. Just clean ash. Sloan appeared behind me, his sleeves rolled, 2 mugs in hand. He handed me one. She's still calling? I nodded. Won't stop. He sat across from me, his gaze sweeping across the skyline. You did it, you know. I didn't answer. He leaned forward. We could develop the rest of the block. Clean energy, sustainable design, real legacy stuff. The city's watching now. You've got the weight to shape something permanent. I raised an eyebrow. No more pretending, I said. Sloan smiled. Only building. We clinked mugs. At the edge of the property, the guard at the front gate lifted a radio. Miss Ashford, he said, voice crackling, she's back. I didn't have to ask who. Brielle stood on the sidewalk, makeup streaked, hair windblown, clutching her phone. She tried to step forward. The guard held up a hand. Sorry, ma'am. You're not on the list. She froze. Her eyes found me, high above, watching from the terrace. I didn't move. She shouted something, I couldn't hear what. It didn't matter. Her voice was just noise now, a fading echo of a game she lost long ago. She turned, desperate, spotting Sloane's car pulling from the side driveway. She ran toward it, yelling his name.
Sloan, wait.
Please. For a split second, the car slowed. The brake lights glowed. Then they disappeared. He didn't stop. A child's voice floated up from the street. A little girl pointing up at the terrace. Is she the one who owns everything now? Her mother glanced up, following the girl's gaze. No, she said, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. She earned it. That afternoon, one more envelope arrived, hand-delivered, not by courier, but by Mrs. Evelyn Parks herself, the older woman who once kept to herself and whom Brielle had dismissed at every neighborhood gathering. Inside, on pale cream stationery, her handwriting flowed with delicate precision. You didn't just reclaim your place. You restored dignity to this street. No signature, just that one quiet truth. I folded it gently and placed it in the drawer beside my journal. I closed my eyes for just a second. The last ping from my phone came and went. No more alerts. No more apologies. Just the hum of morning, the light on my skin, the sound of possibility returning. As I turned and stepped inside, the glass doors slid shut behind me. The camera tracked slowly behind me, rising just enough to catch the full view of the terrace. My figure bathed in golden sunlight. No dialogue, only silence. The doors clicked, and for the first time in years, I was alone, not abandoned, free. I'm not haunted by the past anymore. The silence surrounding me now isn't loneliness, it's peace. I stood up for myself, claimed my worth, and let the world witness what quiet strength can truly build. Because here's the truth, when you stop begging for approval and start building your own empire, no one can take it from you. Those who rise on lies always fall harder. But those who rise on truth, we don't just survive. We redefine the rules. Have you ever been underestimated, overlooked, or betrayed by the very people who should have supported you? Drop your story in the comments. Someone out there needs to hear it, and maybe you need to say it. And if you're ready for more stories where karma wears heels and keeps receipts, stick around. The next one's going to hit even harder.